The nation needs to start paying closer attention to Washington. They're a sleeping giant in the Big Ten.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Just a quick reminder to all you everydayers out there, wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, make sure to click that subscribe button, click that little bell as well. Should never miss when we post a new show. Plus, from the audio-only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the channel out a lot. Now, I got a really fun show coming at all you everydayers out there today. I'm going to spend some time on the 2026 recruiting class because there was a surprise official visitor on campus over the weekend, a Florida commit. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're also going to talk about some of the young building blocks that Jedd Fisch's team has all over the field. And it's really exciting, but what's even more exciting is where this Washington team is sitting right now, where the Huskies are on bye this week, but coming back, they're going to go to Wisconsin. Not an easy trip, but that team is not very good right now. Then you come home and you play Purdue. Then you go to UCLA, another team that, certainly lost a little bit of shine, let's say, to, be fair, after that just dismantling at Indiana. So 3 winnable games, very winnable games against teams that are in the bottom third of the Big Ten right now. And let's get a couple things clear here. This Washington team still has some major flaws. I know. The pass rush, certainly there's a lot to be desired there. The offensive line doesn't have a lot of depth, so you're certainly relying on these starters. But when everything is going right, especially now that Carver Willis and John Mills are back healthy, there's so much to like about this Husky team. And all of those things shine through in this big win over Illinois. Damon Williams looked awesome. Over 300 total yards, 4 touchdowns. You had Jonah Coleman get over 100 scrimmage yards. He scores twice. Denzel Boston, career day, 10 catches, 153 yards. He scores twice, including the passing touchdown. So your stars shine through. You see it on the defensive side as well. Tacario Davis gets the pick after he was robbed of one earlier in the game. Zaydrius Rainey-Sale looks incredible. Can't wait to talk about him later on as well. Alex McLaughlin, X-Ray Alexander, by the way, also just had a tremendous game with 12 tackles. So there is so much to like, and you can point to pretty much every position and say, this guy is playing well. That guy is playing well. This guy is standing out and just has the potential to be one of the better players at their position in the Big Ten. I love what I've seen from Tacario Davis along the interior of the defensive line. There's still certainly a lot to be desired, especially on the edge. And I wasn't necessarily thrilled with the performance we saw from the defensive line against Illinois, who just had one of the worst offensive lines in the Big Ten. Not getting a single sack on Luke Altmyer was not great, but at the same point, I got to tip my cap to Brett Bielema, who did some nice things to get Altmyer just on the move and just really kept the defensive line, the front 7, off guard with some of the runs that the quarterback runs and different things that they threw at this Husky defense, especially early on. So with all that being said, and knowing that there are such major flaws with this team, or just a couple of big-time concerns, let's say, that's probably a better way to put it. The fact that this Husky team is sitting here at 6-2, getting a whole bunch of votes in the AP poll, a whole bunch of votes in the coaches poll. We don't need to get into the whole, rank them thing today, because you keep winning. That is certainly going to work itself out, especially with the college football playoff rankings coming here sooner rather than later. And I'm not saying that this team right now is a big time contender to make the college football playoff, because you still need to go out and prove it, especially, you look at the last game on the schedule against Oregon. But as of right now, this team does control its own destiny for the college football playoff. And knowing that with so many big time stars, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I look at these next 3 weeks after the bye week, that is, and there is no reason that Washington shouldn't be one of the most talked about teams in the country. The way Jedd Fisch called that game on Saturday against Illinois was practically perfect. There's a mishap here and a mishap there, but that was probably the best game that he has called all season long. You got to tip your cap to him for that too. So again, let's look at these 3 upcoming matchups, because there is so much to like about these matchups for Washington. And it being an offensive-minded team, I wanted to throw a couple offensive stats at all you everydayers out there. Washington right now is number 5 in the Big Ten in scoring offense, averaging 35.5 points per game. They're also number 4 in the conference in total offense, averaging 438.6 yards per game. Now, over the next 3 games, you're going to be facing scoring defenses that are number 13, number 15, and number 17. So you are going to have plenty of opportunities to take advantage of some of the worst defenses in the conference. And I mean, yes, there's still going to be major questions like, can you continue to play well on the road, especially after the big time speed bump you suffered at Michigan? And I can't help but be really excited about where this team is going. And yes, a lot of it is because of the big time stars that you have on this team. And it's not just on the offensive side. It is Tacario Davis on defense, Alex McLaughlin, as he continues to emerge. Ephesians Prysock has played really, really well. Rashawn Clark had a tremendous game against Hank Beatty when you go back and you look at the film. So there are some big time stars on defense, and I really do like where that side is going. But again, it does all start with the offense here. And the reason I wanted to bring up the defense is because thanks to them, Washington is +4 in the turnover margin on the season. And I mean, obviously, you can take away a fluky play here or there at Michigan as well, and that's even higher. And after completing 78% of his passes against Illinois on Saturday, Demond Williams is now up to number 2 in the conference in completion percentage at 73.1. So this is also an offense that has done just such a great job of protecting the ball all season long. And yeah, you also had a couple bounces certainly go your way in the game against Illinois. But after some of the things that you went through last year, I think you were due a bounce or two like that. Am I right? So I look at all these things, and these are all things that I couldn't be more excited about. And Jedd Fisch has done, again, such a great job of turning this team around in a week, because we were on this show last week saying Jedd Fisch took the blame for this, Jedd Fisch took the blame for that, and all these things that went wrong at Michigan. And he and his coaching staff, they sat down, they fixed some stuff, and they figured it out. Look at Ryan Walters and his defensive adjustments in the second half of this game against Illinois, holding them to just 8 points. That was tremendous. And even those 8 points came on a drive that 30 of those yards were aided by penalties that, let's just say were questionable. So I really love where this Husky team sits. And again, all these questions that need to be answered over the next few weeks, they absolutely will be. But one of the reasons that Washington is a sleeping giant in the Big Ten is not just because of what you can do this season. There is so much that you can get to long-term. And I'm going to get to some of these young guys in a couple of minutes here. And again, the recruiting stuff as well is very, very important when you talk about sustaining success. And I look at where Jedd Fisch is with this program right now, and it's so exciting because you can think about the guys that you already have committed in the 2026 class and just what this is going to continue to look like moving forward. Jedd clearly understands what it's going to take to recruit and to win at a high level. And with the way Washington is able to get this influx of talent, not just from the high school ranks, you need to go out and you need to do some big time spending in the portal, especially along the defensive line, to continue to level up in that department. But again, these are things that this coaching staff fully understands, and Washington has all the resources to make it happen. The fundraising is in a tremendous spot right now when you go look at some of the numbers from the Go Big campaign and everything like that. And as just money continues to funnel into this program, and Jedd has done a really, really good job of selling it. And I fully believe that he's going to continue to do that. And when you look at where this Husky team is right now and where it's going to continue to go, are you going to have your concerns about things like discipline and penalties? Yes, but at the same time, as this team continues to grow and shows that it can overcome things like that, like the holding call on Decker DeGraff on the opening drive that still turns into a touchdown, you're able to overcome the PI here and the PI there and, the second sideline interference of the year where you didn't get a warning and the flag is just immediately thrown. There are so many things that this team can continue to improve on. And if this is the baseline, again, last year you can throw out with the way the transfer portal went and just the truly unique circumstances that the Huskies were in that year. This is really, truly the foundational year. And I know it's a term we use on the show a lot. The foundational year for Jedd and this program and what it can be moving forward. And if your baseline is, let's say you are able to win out till you get to the Oregon game and you fall to what is still a top 10 team in the country and you finish the year at 9-3. If that is your cornerstone, that is your building block with an elite quarterback at the helm of Demond Williams, this program is certainly going places. And with the way, again, that this coaching staff is able to recruit, just look at this 2025 class. There are going to be some very big things on the horizon for Washington. So let's talk about that 2025 class because this Husky team is set up wonderfully for the long term. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. And the app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, let's dive into some of these 2025 guys. And right off the top, just, getting this out there as a disclaimer, I'm thrilled with what some of the other young players look like, some redshirt freshmen like Pocky Finau and Rashawn Clark, and just some of these other guys look like as well. But I want to talk about these class of 2025 guys specifically, because this is just going to be a thing at Washington for the foreseeable future. Like, we're going to just be talking about this team at this point in 2026, and we're going to be talking about Cody Green as potential starter. We're going to talk about Derek Coleman-Brusa as potential starter. Brian Bonner is going to be in the mix. He's going to contribute. Mason James is going to contribute in some way, shape, or form. That's just what this team is going to look like. So I look at the class 2025, and the conversation, it starts with two people. And let's start with John Mills, because we saw him back yesterday after a short absence, and it's just so clear that this kid changes the offensive line. And no matter what his future looks like, if he kicks out to tackle next year, if he sticks at guard, this is someone who's going to be an impact player in the Big Ten and is going to be one of the best offensive linemen in the Big Ten. He just turned 18 years old, the 26th, the one I'm recording this 10 days ago. This kid is young, he is hungry, and watching him play on a week in, week out basis is so much fun. And you could see it in pass protection. You could see it in run blocking. It was clear that Jedd Fisch felt so much more comfortable going to a number of different calls, because you didn't just have to run right, and that's no shade at Pocky. It's no shade at Maximus McCree or Sowane Fasolo, but when you have your starting offensive line, especially a kid like John Mills, who moves the way he does, and the last he told us he was measured in at 6'6" and 340 pounds, who's moving so well at that size, it's just different. And you're able to just call different things in polls and just trying to get runs outside when you have a kid like that leading the way. So I love what he brings to the table, and it's hard to not put Dezmen Roebuck in the same conversation, where John Mills made all the true freshman midseason All-America teams. And like I said on the show a few weeks ago, Dez absolutely deserves to be in that conversation. You look at the game he had yesterday. 3 catches for 36 yards and a pair of touchdowns. The second one being an incredible acrobatic grab. And the first one, too, he had to break a couple tackles to get into the end zone. He's bouncing off guys. He is such a talented playmaker. And having a guy like that, where I know when he first got here in June, I was one of the first people to say, I don't know how much he's going to contribute this year through no fault of his own, just because I assume that guys like Chris Lawson and Raiden Vines-Bright were going to be ahead of him. And Chris Lawson does get hurt, and he's someone who I'll get to in a minute as well. But every single day, just like he did on the field on Saturday, Dez has stepped up and made the most of his opportunities and proven that he is going to be an indispensable part of this offense as this team continues to move forward. Because I look at 2026, and you're not going to have Denzel Boston around. He's going to go get picked in the first round of the NFL draft, and you are going to be looking for someone to step up and fill the void of what he's been able to do this year, being top 20 in the nation in receiving yards, and just looking at everything else that Denzel has done for this team this year. You are going to need to find other guys to be those target vacuums. And Dez is very quickly proving that he can be one of those guys. Again, he's 19th in the Big Ten in receiving yards this year, and that's second among true freshmen, only behind, the number 1 ranked receiver in the country in Tacario Moore. So seeing everything that he's been able to do is just so much fun to watch. And just a reminder, I know I brought these numbers up a few weeks ago. He's done that on just 24 catches. He's averaging over 16 yards of reception. He's been absolutely tremendous so far this year, and he's got 4 touchdowns. I couldn't be happier with what Dezmen Roebuck brings to this team. And I think, honestly, the most exciting part of this is the fact that on this side of the ball, he's not alone at that position. I know I just mentioned Mason James, the 4-star recruit in the class of 2026, but You look at these 25 guys, Raiden Vines-Bright just continues to make plays on a week in, week out basis. He had a couple of catches in this game. That's 4 for 28 yards. It's nice to see him continue to get involved in the offense. Chris Lawson had a pair of catches for 11 yards as well. These guys are involved every single week. And Chris Lawson looks like a guy who can stretch the field. Raiden Vines-Bright absolutely has the athleticism to do that. And just seeing what this offense could look like with potentially those three guys being your starters next year, I think Rashid Williams is absolutely going to be in the mix as well. But because he hasn't played in so long, it sucks that we haven't gotten a chance to just see more from him so far this year. I have a feeling he might be back after the bye week as well too. And he's another guy who, I mean, I know he's a sophomore, but should be in this conversation as well as a true building block for this team and for this offense. And all of a sudden, we're going to get into this, into the spring and into the summer. And I know this is supposed to be a conversation about 2025, but it's hard to not also look at the long term of this team and just think about how many young receivers you have on this roster and just the level of playmaking that they've already shown to be at. And it's so much fun to see that. And it just shows you why Washington is set up so well for the long term on the offensive side of the ball. And you can absolutely say the same thing about the defensive side. I know I gave my shout out to Rashawn Clark already, but let's talk about some of these true freshmen. And of course, that starts with the highest ranked player, the number one player in state. Anything you want to say about him in Zaydrius Rainey-Sale, who was absolutely tremendous in this game. It's something I talked about on the just over the last couple of weeks leading up to this, is we are going to continue to see Zay more and more in pass coverage. And he had a pair of pass breakups in this game, only had one tackle, but as he continues to see his snap count increase, this kid is just going to be an absolute game changer. He was the one who got credit for the pass breakup where it hit Hank Beatty on 3rd and 21, popped up into the air for an interception for Tacario Davis. We're going to continue to see him make plays like that. And just a reminder, Hank Beatty is the whole reason that Rashawn Clark started in this game, because he is a super shifty slot receiver who can make plays and is a really nice athlete. And the fact that Zay was able to, you go back and you watch that play, he reads what is going on that route in an instant and is able to get into position and make a really, really nice play on the ball, contacting Hank Beatty just perfectly. It's so much fun to see another kid, just like John Mills. He is still 17 years old. And to watch him make plays like that is just such an intriguing thought for the future of this Washington defense, because with a kid like that in the middle, with, yes, Jacob Manu is going to redshirt this season. We're probably only going to see him against Oregon. So we're going to continue to see Zay take more and more snaps as the season goes along. And, you know, I know Buda Alukta and Devin Bryant, Nexry Alexander are all going to be in the mix next year. But if your two starters are Zaydrius Rainey-Sale and Jacob Manu, you might have one of the best combinations of linebackers in the Big Ten already. And that's without even thinking about the truly elite depth that you are going to have at that position next year. You know, just considering a couple other things like Jonathan Epperson, Donovan Robinson, how those guys might come along as well. And maybe a late addition to the 26 class. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. But it's not just him. There's still some question with the defensive line, where I like what I've seen from Devin Hyde so far this season, and he's got a sack under his belt from the opener against Colorado State. And maybe this coaching staff is going to ask more of him as the season goes along, as well, as you continue to not get pressure on the edge. And with Isaiah Ward, it looks like he might be out for a couple weeks at the very least. Jedd Fisch said might be a 2-week injury, 3 or 4. We'll see. I saw him in a bulky knee brace after the game on the sidelines against Illinois. So we'll see what that looks like. And maybe that's going to ask a little bit more of guys like Hayden Moore and Devin Hyde. So we'll see what that looks like. But you get to the secondary and you have two guys who, just like on the offensive side, you can pencil these two dudes in as starters right now next season in Dylan Robinson and Rylon Dillard-Allen. And it was so much fun watching Rylon Dillard-Allen tackle. He had the one hit early on in the game. I can't remember off the top of my head which of the running backs for Illinois that he tackled, but he showed all of that same athleticism, that fearlessness, that physicality for a guy who is still undersized during spring practice and during fall camp, to the point where some of his teammates got a little frustrated because he is just that physical, and it's full tilt, full time. And not only do you love to see that, but for a kid with legit 4.2 speed, he had a laser timed 4.28 40-yard dash in high school. For a kid who runs like that and moves like that and is just your true free safety going into next season, it's hard to not to be excited about what that means. And then Dylan Robinson, this coaching staff has absolutely raved about him. Another kid who got here in June and was thrown into a starting role when Tacario Davis had to miss 3 games with his rib injury. Just seeing the way he has continued to grow and develop as well, where this all goes back to stuff that Jedd Fisch has talked about since the day he arrived at Washington. And again, this is why Washington is such a sleeping giant, not just for the remainder of this season, but for what all of these guys are going to look like as they continue to grow and progress into the 26th season, into the 27th season, as they just continue to get older and more mature and see more things on the football field. It's so exciting to think about with a kid like Dylan Robinson learning behind Tacario Davis, behind Ephesians Prysock, something he talked about with us a few weeks ago, and how much he's been able to just soak in being the same kind of player as those guys is one of the biggest reasons that he chose Washington, where I know Tacario Davis wasn't here when he committed, but just having the opportunity to learn from those guys and learn from John Richardson, who has helped develop them into some of the best cornerbacks in the country, is so important. And thinking about what that could look like next year is such an exciting thought. And knowing that kid right now is just a rotational corner with some of the plays he's already been able to make, or he had the forced fumble against Washington State as well. You can't forget about that. It's such an exciting thought because this Husky team is young, exciting, and has building blocks everywhere, and they're not done adding to it. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. As we get to the home stretch here, as always, this recruiting segment is brought to you by the Locked On Huskies Insider Program. If you're interested, you get all the breaking news, recruiting rumors, injury news, anything like that. It's all dropped right in your inbox. If you want to check it out, there's a link down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. Because speaking of the wonderful insider community that we are developing over there, where I also, just by the way, get back to every single question you might have for me about what's going on around the team. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that our insiders knew before literally anybody else is there was a surprise fourth official visitor on campus over the weekend for Washington's matchup with Illinois. It was 3-star tight end Kekua Aumua, who's currently playing at Kahuku High School down in Hawaii. This is someone who Washington has been after for a really, really long time. And I love his profile. 6'5", 255 pounds. You watch that kid play. He's a super smooth mover, great blocker, where I've seen some people even suggest that maybe he winds up on the defensive line in high school or at the college level, excuse me. I really do love his talent, and no matter what side of the ball he does end up on, this is someone who Washington would love to have as part of this class. And I would certainly love to see it too, where he's been committed to Florida since early June. He was actually supposed to take his official visit to Washington in late June as part of the June 20th recruiting weekend, but made his pledge to Billy Napier and the Gators. But now that Billy Napier has been fired, we'll see what that looks like. And I know people are wondering about the Jedd Fisch rumors. I really don't think he's on the top of the list at this point in time. And while there might be some interest on his side, I think that Florida is probably going to zero in on guys like Lane Kiffin and Eli Drinkwitz and maybe another name or two out there. We'll certainly have a discussion on that later in the week as well. But as of right now, this is where things stand. And Jedd and this coaching staff are doing a tremendous job trying to add some extra names to the 2026 class. And Aumua is a really interesting one. And this was, obviously it's unfortunate that the circumstances at the position, but a great game for him to visit for, because we saw Zach Henning suit up as a jumbo tight end and take some snaps as a blocker where, it was all about the not having to report as eligible every time he enters the ball game kind of thing, lined up at tight end. So that was why there was a number change. But at the same point, this is something that you can sell, where it's unfortunate that Charlie Kroll is out for the season. And obviously Kate Eldridge is as well. Hopefully you're able to see Quentin Moore back after the bye week. It sounds like things are going really well for him, and it doesn't sound like he's out for the year or anything like that. So maybe you're able to see him down the home stretch as well. And you don't have to worry too much about having Zach Henning have to switch positions too many more times over the course of the year. But no matter what, you look at the long-term depth on this roster. You have a guy like Sam Villadol, who's been a really exciting prospect to watch. He's having a tremendous season down in Oregon so far during his senior year, but adding a guy like Kekua Aumua to the mix, giving you another one where Sam is certainly the just much more in the Decker DeGraff role, where there's a lot of room to add weight to his frame, and maybe he continues to improve as a blocker in that light as well. But a guy like Kekua being just, again, 6'5", 255 pounds, and as fluid of an athlete as he is already, adding a guy like that to the mix is a really exciting thought because he is someone who can come in and play for you early on and just be, I don't want to say a dominant blocker, but be a serviceable blocker for you at the very least if he's able to, unseat somebody like Baron Aone or Austin Simmons. And it was great to see Baron get some snaps in that game against Illinois, by the way. But it seems like he's another guy where, as of right now, with his frame being 6'3", 235 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark, Washington is not relying on him as a block first kind of tight end. So we'll see just how these guys continue to grow and develop throughout their careers. But just adding another high upside body like Kekua to the position would be a really nice add for this Husky coaching staff. And speaking of just really nice ads and really fluid athletes, another guy who I absolutely love that was on campus over the weekend is a 3-star athlete, is what he's listed at. He's probably going to wind up playing safety at the college level. Toray Davis from Fairview High School out in Colorado. This kid is really, really interesting. You lose CJ Lavender to UCLA, but Toray, a former UCLA commit, is now, it looks like he might be deciding between Washington and Texas. It feels like that's, or at least in my opinion, that's what this is going to come down to. He was on campus for this game. He's going to Texas on November 1st. Sounds like he might wind up trying to come to a decision at some point after that. Reminder, he is a former UCLA commit as well, but this is a kid who I love the versatility he brings to the table. And at 6'1", 175 pounds, super fluid mover, has great eyes, and a lot like Rylon Dillard-Allen, you can move him around if you want to. You can have him play nickel. You can have him play strong safety, but he's probably going to be best in a true free safety role for the majority of his college career with just his range, his ball skills, his ability as a tackler. Having somebody like that who can clean up a lot like what Alex McLaughlin is doing is a really exciting thought. And it would also just be the perfect way to round out this defensive backs class after losing CJ Lavender, because you have a couple of guys who are super versatile, where I think that Kasani Giles can play nickel and safety if you need him to. Rajon Duncan can play outside corner and safety if you need him to. I think Elijah Durr and Jaron Jones are both best suited at outside corner, but I think Jaron can also play nickel if you need him to. And then Gavin Day is very much in the Alex McLaughlin mold of he might be utilized a lot as a box safety, but he's got the range to play free. He can certainly play nickel if you need him to, and just act as a hybrid linebacker at times as well with his ability to just lay big time hits on people. So adding someone who has the athleticism to just play that center field role as often as possible is a really nice way to round out this defensive backs class. So I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out. And another guy who we've talked about a lot on the show, I don't want to spend too much time on him today because I want to throw a couple of other new-ish names at you in the 26th class, is Ramzak Fruean. Saw him on his official visit over the weekend. This is a kid who, after visiting Arizona and BYU over the last few weeks, I feel like the Huskies are going to make a big push, especially with this being a bye week and you're able to do a little bit more recruiting to try to get a commitment from him, because I don't think there's anybody on Washington's board that is more important right now than Ramzak Fruean, because a lot of this come back to what I was just talking about with Zaydrius Rainey-Sale. Having a guy like that, having a guy who is just so versatile, so athletic in the middle of the field. Again, talk about what he did in pass coverage. The fact that he can play outside linebacker and get after the quarterback a little bit. The fact that he can be a true thumper for you, playing inside linebacker and defending the run, filling gaps, everything like that. Ramzak is bigger, just as fast, just as strong. It's an exciting thought, and having those two guys in the middle of the field, I'm sure if you asked, I mean, obviously they can't mention these guys by name, but if you asked Ryan Walters or Brian Odom or any member of this Husky coaching staff what they envision for those two guys playing on the field at the same time, you're going to hear some high-end comps because of the speed, the length, and the athleticism that you would have in the middle of the field if those two guys ever took it together, just like they did at Bethel High School last season. But let's throw a couple new names at you, because all of those guys have now taken an official visit to Washington. We'll see what that looks like. The Huskies are still pushing to get a couple more official visits. One who I think is going to end up coming down over the next month or so is 4-star offensive tackle Marlon Bright, a name I have mentioned very briefly on the show, but wanted to give a little bit more coverage to because I'm really interested in what he brings to the table. I think he's a really nice athlete, and the Huskies have an in here where he's protecting the blind side right now of 4-star quarterback Derek Zammit at DePaul Catholic High School out in New Jersey. So this is someone where even though this is, truly going coast to coast for him, the fact that this coaching staff has it in and has been able to get a commitment from just a very important part of his team, obviously, is such a crucial factor. And the Huskies have certainly made a push for him in the last few weeks after James Franklin was fired. And I know he told my good buddy Scott Eklund over at dogman.com that he's looking to set up an official visit with Washington. I know the Huskies are very interested in making that happen. I don't think that's going to happen during the bye week. I would bet that they want to get him out for a home game, whether it be, against Purdue in a few weeks or maybe for Oregon at the very end of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if Derek Zammit wanted to come out on that trip with him and take an unofficial visit. So that's something I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out. But there's one other guy I want to talk about because I think the Huskies are also very interested in getting an official visit from him. And it's just a matter of when that's going to happen. That's 4-star wide receiver Jayden Petit from down in Florida. He's someone who has been committed to Wisconsin for a couple of months now, and I feel like the Huskies are going to try to get him out to UW on an official visit at some point before the end of the year. I feel like they might have tried to do it for this past game, but it looked like he wound up at Oklahoma on an unofficial visit since he'd already taken his official there to watch them battle Ole Miss, and maybe, again, just like with Marlon Bright, you can find a way to make that work for potentially the Oregon game because, like I was talking about earlier, if you win these next 3 games, that game is going to leave a lasting impression on recruits, on just everything when it comes to this program is just, it's building towards something really, really special that I'm incredibly excited for. And that's a name I'm going to be watching very, very closely because I think that Washington they want to add another receiver to this class for nothing else other than you go watch the 2 dudes that they've offered over the course of the past week. They're just extremely talented players. And if you can add one of them to your class in any way, shape, or form, you absolutely need to go make a push to do that however you possibly can. And I would say the same thing along the defensive line. And it was nice to see Tom Malu finally take his official visit to UW. He's someone who I think has a lot of really high-end potential after a year or two of continuing to grow and learn the game of football. So I like where UW is there, but if they go out and try to flip an edge rusher, flip a defensive lineman, that's something I'm going to be keeping a really, really close eye on over the next, 4 or 5 weeks as we get closer to early signing day. So Washington has plenty of opportunities to add to this class. It's up to 18 right now in 247 Sports' composite rankings, and you're going to have several opportunities to just get that higher and higher. And with the way things are looking with some of these top prospects in the 27 class, I feel great about where Washington is right now on the recruiting trail. Just a heads up for all you everydayers out there, that's going to be a huge theme on the show this week with the bye week because there is so much recruiting stuff to get to. So if you like all that, you like what we have to offer, please make sure you subscribe. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. One more time, because I got to make sure I remind you, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you know when we post new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please give us a 5-star review as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.